Latin American peoples mobilized on Tuesday in the framework of the Indigenous Resistance Day. Bolivians organized the Gran Huipalazo also to condemn new right-wing destabilization attempts. The Ministerial Summit of Non-Aligned Movement concluded on Tuesday in Serbia. Syria continued to ease coercive sanctions imposed on its Center for Scientific Studies and Research and some of its employees. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ray Gomez from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. On Tuesday, Bolivians are mobilized in defense of the Huipala, a flag that represents every indigenous community in the plurinational state. They also protest against right-wing destabilization attempts. Bolivians are gathering in different parts of the Indian country for the Gran Huipalazo, an event organized in the framework of the Indigenous Resistance Day in opposition to the commemoration of the beginning of the Spanish conquest. Likewise, the mobilizations called by social organizations will extend to the 9 departments of the country to express their rejection to sectors that intend to undermine the peace. On Monday, Bolivia's prosecutor's office started the process of verifying the electoral records of 2019 to determine whether there was an alleged fraud denounced by the right wing and endorsed by the Secretary of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, an argument that served as a cornerstone of the coup d'etat that cost at least 3 lives. For 5 days and with the participation of civil society, including 4 students from the Public University of El Alto, as well as experts in the area, the process led by the Attorney General's office will carefully review the electoral material as an act of justice and truth in defense of Bolivian democracy. As will be recalled, in October 2019, the Bolivian right-wing parties and the OAS mission concluded there was a fraudulent polls. Then President Evo Morales was re-elected without any basis whatsoever. The American organization did not deploy any national audit parameters and neither to the count, according to the Attorney General Wilfredo Chavez, who also explained that the parties that insisted on fraud have refused to participate in the verification. The number of children who cross the Darien Gap on foot has hit an all-time high, UNICEF warned on Tuesday. Almost 19,000 children have journeyed through the Darien Gap so far this year, nearly 3 times more than the number registered over the 5 previous years combined. More than 1 in 5 people crossing the border between Colombia and Panama are children. Half of them is below the age of 5. And this dense tropical forest, families with children are particularly exposed to violence, including sexual abuse, trafficking, and extortion from criminal gangs. Children who cross the Darien Gap are also at risk of getting diarrhea, respiratory diseases, dehydration, and other ailments that require immediate attention. The Darien Gap, a jungle that separates Colombia and Panama, is one of the most dangerous places for asylum seekers attempting to reach North America.
It hurts. Women holding children in their arms. It hurts. Mothers with 3-month babies. 4-month, 5-month. It hurts. Pregnant women that have had to help. It is really heartbreaking. And it is also painful that so many people, instead of helping them, just hurt them, steal from them. It is terrible.
3 Haitian children and adults, 2 adults remain missing after shipwreck in the waters of the Gulf of Urabá in Colombia. Fishermen managed to spot in waters near Cabo Tiburon the wreck of a boat that was used by dozens of asylum seekers. According to the information provided by Colonel Jaina Giovanni Puentes Aguilar, commander of the Urabá Police Department, the 3 Haitian children and 2 adults are still missing. The officer also confirmed that 3 bodies were found dead and 21 people were rescued alive, among them 5 minors. Meanwhile, the Ombudsman's office regretted the situation and stated that his office had repeatedly checked on illegal vessels leaving Nicoclí, along with the Urabá Coast Guard. On Tuesday, authorities in Havana, the capital of Cuba, responded to the organizers of a march called for November, denying its realization due to its unconstitutional and destabilizing purposes. Alexis Acosta Silva, the intendant of All Havana, explained that based on Article 56 of the Constitution of the Caribbean country, the demonstration is not illicit since several of its organizers maintain links with subversive organizations and agencies that promote a change of regime in a violent way in Cuba. Furthermore, given that the march was the support of the U.S. government, political agents, and media that encourage the destabilization of the countries and violence, it was not possible to allow it. Article 45 of the Cuban Constitution explains that the exercise of individual rights cannot put collective rights at risk. Therefore, a violent demonstration that threatens the majority cannot be allowed. The main organizers of the convoked march are also the principal actors of the violent demonstrations of July 11th that were simultaneously called for and carried out against public institutions as hospitals, stores, and governmental facilities. Cuba's ambassador to UNESCO, Yahima Esquivel, denounced the organization's executive council, the criminal nature, the U.S. blockade against the island and its strengthening during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the meeting, the diplomat described the economic, commercial, and financial situation as the cruelest and longest ever imposed against any nation. Esquivel condemned the opportunistic implementation of the blockade. She pointed out in the UN body specialized in education, science and culture that the Trump administration reinforced the blockade with 243 new measures, many of them in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic hostile actions upheld to date by his successor in the White House, Joe Biden. In Haiti, armed gangs kept their dominion in several sectors of Port-au-Prince blocked, specifically in the south. Barricades of running tires, stones, and objects were registered in Montaigne after the alleged kidnapping of at least 5 residents of the area. Also, the viaducts of Dormans, citizens blocked the avenue, one of the most important in the capital, while a marching armed men terrorized passers-by, stopped traffic, and searched vehicles crossing the territory. Since Sunday, the leader of the village, Didier Gong, announced that he will close the passage in the area, which also houses the courthouse and connects Port-au-Prince with the south Nips and Grand Anse departments, the last 3 affected by the recent earthquake that left over 2,200 dead. The gangs operating in the capital expanded their zones of control without the police being able to confront the groups, despite the government promises to restore peace. We now take a break. Welcome back. The second day of the Non-Aligned Movement's commemorative summit begins in the Serbian capital. Well, it didn't begin. It ended. An intense round of bilateral meetings had marked the prelude to the second day between delegations of the attending countries. During the opening session, the different interventions urged to fight together against coercive measures as a mechanism to impose political agendas and to seek international cooperation as the only way towards prosperity. 114 delegations from various countries and foreign ministers of foreign affairs are participating in this summit. We better say they were participating. The NAM, which was created at the first conference of the Belgrade Summit, held on September 1st, 1961, maintains peace, non-interference, cooperation, and the certainty that a multipolar world is the way for a better humanity, as a cross-cutting stressed. In this context, the ambassador to China, or of China to Serbia, Chambo, highlighted her country's political support and economic assistance to developing nations.
China is a natural partner of none. We have been sharing well and well with developing countries. We have been providing political support to them, offering economic assistance and speaking up for justice in the international arena. Those features shine like the primary corners of China's foreign policy. China will always be a member of the developing world. Our heart will always be within developing countries, and we will continue to stand side by side with them, uphold justice while pursuing shared interests.
Minister of Labor of Guyana, Joseph Hamilton, recalled the circumstances in which an online movement was created in 1961.
Recalling the circumstances that led to the genesis of our great movement, I must underscore what is perhaps one of the greatest lessons learned from that era, and that is, in the pursuit of international peace and security, mutual understanding between and among nations is critical. We have seen how philosophical differences can separate us and inhibit friendly relations among the peoples of the world.
The Minister of State of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria, Zubair Dada, stressed the need to fulfill the terms of the 23 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
As we commemorate our 60th anniversary this year, we also move one step closer to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Hence, the need to be mindful that we are now in the decade of action, and this call for more radical measures to realize the target we set for ourselves.
Strong earthquake with magnitude 6.3 was recorded at noon on Tuesday on the Greek island of Crete, according to Geodynamic Institute of the National Observatory of Athens. The epicenter was recorded 23 kilometers east of Sakra village in the region of Lysitia with a depth of 8.2 kilometers. A few weeks ago, the island was hit with another earthquake measuring 5.8. No damages or casualties have been reported so far, according to local media. The island territory was the scene of several earthquakes in the recent weeks. The most serious of them took place at the end of September, causing the death of one person due to the collapse of a church under construction. Up to 3,000 residents of the Spanish island of La Palma on Monday were ordered to stay indoors after lava from the Cumbre Vieja volcano destroyed cement work, raising fresh fears of toxic gases. Miguel Angel Morcuende, head of the self-handling crisis, said that part of the cement factory had gone up in flames. Consequently, authorities issued a lockdown until experts can analyze if the air quality allows for normal life. The order concerns about 3,000 people living near the cement works of the west of the island in the Canaries archipelago. On Saturday, part of a volcano's cone collapsed, sending new rivers of lava pouring down the slopes towards an industrial zone. The Cumbre Vieja volcano began erupting on September 19th, forcing about 6,000 people from their homes as the lava scorched its way across 600 hectares.
You can talk about tourism when so many families are watching how the lava is taking their houses, their businesses, and their banana plantations. Entire families who overnight woke up one day and had everything and found themselves in a sports center with a bag in their hand. So I don't dare. I don't care about the tourists at the moment. We are in a bad way, very bad, and nothing. We are working because there's nothing else we can do and trying to escape this as best as we can. There's nothing else we can do.
On Tuesday, China pledged $230 million to establish a fund for biodiversity protection in developing countries. President Xi Jinping, speaking by video to a UN conference in the southwest Chinese city of Kunming, called on other countries to contribute to the Kunming Biodiversity Fund. The week-long meeting marks the formal start of a new round of global talks on protecting the world's plants and animals from extinction. A second and final session that will try to agree on targets for the next 10 years is scheduled to be be held in Kunming on 2022 second quarter. The Asian giant, after decades of a headlong economic growth, has made progress in protecting habitat and wildlife in recent years, setting up protected areas and sees recoveries in the population of the giant panda and other species. Russian President Vladimir Putin, Turkish mandatory Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres are also interviewed in the conference.
China will continue to promote the adjustment of industrial structure and energy structure and develop renewable energy. We will accelerate the planning and construction of large-scale wind power photovoltaic projects in deserts, Gobi and desert areas. The first phase of the project, with an installed capacity of about 1 million kilowatts, has started in an orderly manner recently.
An ambitious and effective post-2020 global biodiversity framework with clear targets and benchmarks can put nature and people back on track. This framework should work in synergy with the Paris Agreement on climate change and other multilateral agreements on forests, desertification and oceans. COP15 is our chance to call a ceasefire. Together with COP26 on climate, it should lay the foundations for a permanent peace agreement. By 2030, we must reverse our trajectory and start to build the world we want.
We go now to a financial break. Welcome back. Syria condemned Tuesday EU's coercive sanctions imposed in the country's center for scientific studies and research and some of its employees. Authorities of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates said the measures are taken in the context of systematic hostile actions against Damascus and lack of the slightest degree of objectivity. Syrian authorities also pointed out that the lies are launched by countries hostile to the Arab country, which also may continuous attempts to politicize the work of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. For its part, the Syrian Foreign Ministry said that the European Union has lost its independence in politics and is not entitled to play any role in the international arena. Iraqi electoral authorities reported on Tuesday that the Zadr movement, headed by Muqtada al-Zadr, is leading the vote count in several provinces and so far has won more than 70 of the 329 seats that make up the parliament. It was also known that the party of the former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki of the Islamic Dawa Party is in second place in terms of the number of seats obtained. The electoral process was held a few months before the total withdrawal of the US troops from the Arab country, to be completed in December 31st after 18 years of war and occupation. This is the first election since the overthrow of Saddam Hussein to be held without a curfew, reflecting the significant improvement of the security situation in Iraq after the defeat of ISIS in 2017. With a high tension that reached 60% of the electorate and with problems in the counting system, the final results of the contest are awaited. After a meeting with U.S. representatives last weekend, the Taliban held another encounter with German officials and on Tuesday talks with the other European Union member nations, as announced by Taliban acting Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi. EU spokesperson Nabila Masourali said the talks are an informal exchange at technical level and that it does not constitute recognition of the interim government. However, following the discussions on Monday, the German delegation said the Taliban government is a reality. The two sides discussed access to humanitarian aid and women's rights, among other issues. The group took over Afghanistan on August 15th as the U.S. and NATO allies withdrew forces from the country. The Taliban are attempting to bolster relations with Western powers at the same ones and that left the social, economic, and political crisis in the Central Asian nation. Also, these talks could be a sign that the Taliban needs a sword of assistance with a heavy burden, the Islamic State. The extraordinary G20 of Afghanistan, which will virtually bring together the leaders of the group on Tuesday to discuss a joint way of dealing with the crisis in the Asian country, is a fundamental meeting to avoid a humanitarian catastrophe when there are 1 million children suffering from acute malnutrition and at risk of dying, UNICEF warned. Andrea Iacomini, spokesman for the United Nations body in Italy, said the situation in the country is really serious, adding that the health system is crumbling because of a lack of equipment, medicines, personnel, and adequate resources. Among other objectives, the summit aims to reach an agreement to allocate funds by avoiding the Taliban regime, for which UN representatives, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, as well as neighboring countries, have also been invited to the meeting. On Tuesday, the European Union has pledged a €1 billion aid package for Afghanistan to avert a major humanitarian and socio-economic collapse, the bloc's chief Ursula von der Leyen said. European Union leaders met on Tuesday with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has fiercely opposed a new gas pipeline that bypasses his country and increases Europe's energy reliance on Russia. European Council leader Charles Michel and European Commission leader Ursula von der Leyen headed to Ukraine as Europe faces a gas crisis after a surge in prices and drop in reserves. Keeps years-long war with the Russian-backed separatists and reform efforts will also be on the agenda, but the gas crisis is likely to be at the forefront of talks. Ukraine, in conflict with Russia since Moscow's 2014 accession of Crimea, wants to ensure it will remain a key transit country, and Zelensky has spoken out against Nord Stream 2, a Baltic Sea pipeline set to double natural gas supplies from Russia to Germany. The pipeline, which is still awaiting approval from the German regulator, diverts supplies from an existing route through Ukraine and is expected to deprive Europe's ally of an estimated €1 billion, annually in transit fees from Russia. Von der Leyen and Michel insist on the European commitment to, of course, guarantee the role of Ukraine as gas transit country. Venezuela received a new shipment of the first dose of the Sputnik V vaccine from Russia, while the government said it hoped to reach immunity for 70% of its population by the end of the month. Last September, the Bolivarian nation received 3 shipments of Sputnik V, which were included in the vaccination program carried out by the government throughout the country. Venezuela also received a second batch of 2.5 million doses of vaccines via the COVAX mechanism. The Pan American Health Organization and UNICEF representatives, as well as Venezuelan government officials, were present at Simón Bolívar International Airport in the outskirts of Caracas to receive the doses. According to the Vice Minister of Collective Health Networks, besides the doses supplied by COVAX, Venezuela can also count on doses of Sputnik V from Russia, the Chinese Sinopharm, and Cuba's Abdala vaccine to inoculate its population. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, also in Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Ray Gomez. Thank you for watching.